everybody, and welcome to the FASEB webinar as we launch our new animal research fact sheet called Animal Research Saves Lives and Cures Diseases. So this should be a pretty brief webinar as I will walk you through these new resources that we are excited to share with you today, but I did want to also leave plenty of time for questions and answers at the end. So please feel free to have your questions ready for us, and I'm happy to answer them. My name is Naomi Harlem-Bacchus. I am a Senior Science Policy Analyst here in the Office of Public Affairs at the Federation of American Societies for Experimental Biology. And I'm excited today to introduce to you our brand new animal research fact sheets. So let's go ahead and get started. I did want to mention right up front that we are recording this webinar. So for the folks that were not able to tune in live, you are able to watch it later, and it will be available on our website. In addition, there will be a chance to ask questions. So if you want to ask a question, just follow these directions that you see on your screen, and just type in your question, and I will be happy to go through those at the very end. All right, so as our name suggests, we are a federation, and we make up 29 member societies. And what's great about FASEB is that we represent a wide range of disciplines and sections of science and biology. So currently, we represent over 130,000 scientists and engineers, ranging from microbiology and genetics, leukocyte biology, to engineers and peptide. So I think what's a great advantage of FASEB is that we are a unified voice. That when we go and represent and have discussions with federal agencies or to Congress, we represent a united front, and that's important when we especially talk about animal research. That we represent a wide range of voices. So believe it or not, FASEB was founded over 100 years ago in 1912, and one of the primary reasons for its creation was, of course, actually animal research. There was a need in the field that scientists and clinicians felt that there should be a society speaking on behalf of them on the importance of animal research, and mainly on advocating for the humane and ethical use of animals in research. So it became and remains today one of the core pillars of FASEB Mission, which is to advance the health and well-being by promoting research and education in biological and biomedical sciences through collaborative advocacy and service to societies and their members. And we do this through a variety of means. So we do this through policy research and development. We have a science policy department where we monitor and research policies that guide the work that scientists do, and that is the department that I work in. But we also are advocates, and we have a legislative affairs team that can serve as a government liaison. And together we work to build coalitions. That's where we can build partnerships with federal agencies, with Congress, and that is only possible through communication and outreach. And so all of these things really help us drive home our mission and accomplish the items that our member societies would like us to do. And animal research remains a core part of that. And today I'm going to be talking to you about how we can advocate more on animal research, because it is a controversial topic at times, but that doesn't mean we should back away from talking about it. So I did want to talk a little bit first about what we have done so far. So FASEB remains actively involved in animal research issues already. So a few things that I wanted to highlight today. First and foremost, as many of you know, the NIH, in collaboration with the FDA and USDA, they released their final report, Reducing Administrative Burden for Researchers, Animal Care and Use in Research. Now, we sent comments on both the draft and the final version. But what we also did was, because we heard that the passion and the concern from the animal research community, we hosted 2 webinars that you can find. And these two webinars, one represented the institutional administrators along with federal agencies like NIH and USDA. We were extremely fortunate to have some speakers from those agencies take part in this. And then the second half discerned the difference between federal requirements and institutional requirements on animal research, because there is some kind of confusion over that. And as normal with our webinars, we decided to let the audience ask questions. And we had so many questions because we had over 500 participants in each of these webinars that we couldn't get to each of the questions. So we combined all of the questions into one FAQ document, also available with these recordings. And what's been really great is that people can access this anytime. And these questions were distributed back to the speakers as well as NIH and USDA. And they took careful consideration in answering these so that you have accurate answers that were fully vetted through the departments. So that is a wonderful resource that is available. Secondly, I wanted to mention, if you had not heard, the NIH just formed a new advisory committee to the director working group, and it's called Enhancing Reproducibility and Rigor in Animal Research. And we felt that it would be worthwhile sending some recommendations for the roster of this group just because we represent so many member societies. And we are very happy to say that a third of the external members on this roster are FASEB recommendations. So that is very exciting. And stay tuned for their first report next month at the December ACD meeting. Third, we also created a humanized mouse models fact sheet that has become quite a topic as of late. So we felt that there should be a resource out there for folks if and when you go to the Hill, if you talk to the public about this issue, you have something there that breaks down what this topic is and how it's used out in the field. And then in January, I am very excited to announce that FASEB is partnering with NIH, National Institute of General Medical Sciences, NIDMS, and we will be hosting a webinar on the diversity of research organisms. So stay tuned for another webinar. All right, so let's get straight to it. So why create these fact sheets? Well, the fact of the matter is that public support for animal research is declining. So you see here on the left, in 2018, this is a Pew Research poll, and Americans were asked whether they support or oppose animal research. And just last year, 52% said that they opposed. Now, if you compare this with some previous years, back in 2014, 50% opposed, and in 2009, 43% opposed. So clearly the needle is not moving in the correct direction. So that's what we are doing at FASEB. We're trying to actively move this needle back the other direction. And how do we do that? And how can FASEB step in? And an important point of FASEB is that we offer these terrific resources and tools for scientists to go out there and talk about this issue with ease. So speaking of tools, I wanted to come up with some new animal fact sheets. And I will say right up front that this is being finalized as of right now. So this design may change a little bit, but this is what it will look like. This will be a front and back fact sheets outlaying all of the variety of research organisms that are used in the lab. And what's great about these is that they offer a wealth of information of the kinds of breakthroughs that have come from using these animals, as well as a direct clinical example that has come from the lab using these organisms. And on the back, you have a little bit more information to provide some context. You have how this animal research is regulated, which is an important point to talk about when you're talking about animal research. And then on the right, you have the number of animals that are used in research. Now, that's a lot of information, so what I'm going to do is break down each of these components to help you get a sense of what exactly each part is for and help you more effectively use them. So let me start with this graph. So this graph is an important point. So the animals in research. If you can see very clearly, the majority of research is conducted in rodents, fish, and birds. And then you see a small sliver of the graph on the right here that's expanded out to the right. And that's the majority of the studies that take up all of the headlines. That is what you hear most of the time in the news. But you see just how small of a portion this research makes up as a whole. And so I think that's an important point to go into. And then if and when you're talking about these studies, you have to remember, too, that before funding is ever awarded for research with rabbits or guinea pigs, there is such careful consideration before the studies can continue. And as many of you may know, the grant process requires consideration of alternatives. It requires an approved IACUC protocol. It requires literature review to make sure that the studies that are being conducted have not been done before. So all of that are taken into consideration, and then it can go to peer review, and then second, council review. So there are so many layers of review that you can talk about and mention because we are not just doing this research whenever we feel like it. There is a strict process in place. So then on the other half, again, of the back side of this fact sheet, you have how animal research is regulated. So at the top, you see the very high level, the federal laws that regulate the work that scientists do, the Animal Welfare Act and Public Health Service Policy, or ACT. And these two help guide animal research just in general. They dictate how animals must be cared for, how they must be housed, how they must be regulated, and in general, these are the top dog two laws that guide animal research. Then underneath that, you see that the federal agencies that are responsible for enforcing these laws. So the USDA, for example, must conduct facility inspections to make sure that they are in compliance with the Animal Welfare Act. And the NIH has strict guidance to make sure that scientists that receive funding for animal research are in compliance with the PHS policy. Now, underneath that, you have the guide for the care and use of laboratory animals, and that is known as the gold standard for animal research because it helps scientists fulfill their obligation to uphold their animal research are conducted in the highest of ethical and scientific standards. So without the guide really serves as something that all scientists refer to, and even at NIH. And then underneath that, you have what institution, at the institutional level. You have the IACUC, which are Institutional Animal Care and Use Committees, and you have institutional veterinarians. You have a wide range of voices that are responsible for caring and monitoring the research that is being conducted at their institutions. And I wanted to say one thing about IACUCs is that this was taken directly from the NIH Office of Laboratory and Animal Welfare website. You see that at least 5 members must include 1 veterinarian, 1 practicing scientist, which makes sense. You have 1 member whose primary concerns are in a non-scientific field. You can have an ethicist, a lawyer, and then you have 1 member who is not affiliated with the institution at all, other than serving on the IACUC. So you have several voices that are making sure that the animals are being treated with the utmost respect and are taken care of in accordance with the science and ethics. So I think these are important points to talk about when you are on anywhere talking about animal research. Now, so let's get to the front and talk about some species-specific examples, because I think that's a great thing about these animal research fact sheets is that you have a variety of animals that are used and exactly what research has from these that are important to us today. So what's great with animal research, and this is an important point to emphasize, is that so much of the research that has come has benefited both humans and the animals themselves. And that is what I'm trying to convey here in this Venn diagram. You see at the top with the non-human primates, you see that some research with non-human primates has benefited strictly species-specific diseases, such as rabies, parasitic diseases. You have some diseases that afflict only humans, such as cirrhosis. But more often than not, the research that has come from non-human primates benefits both because our physiology and our anatomy are so similar that both of these species can come down with Parkinson's, with chronic lung disease. So because of non-human primate research, what you see in the middle box here, we have had advances in Zika virus, in HIV and AIDS, tuberculosis, that not only benefits humans, but also the non-human primates themselves. Now, the bottom line here is that thinking back to that graph, you have to remember that this, again, makes up so little of the animals that are used in animal research. Less than 1% of all animals that are being used right now are with non-human primates, but they have afforded so many advances in medicine and health. And one great example, if you look underneath the Venn diagram, you have a direct clinical example of this. So because of non-human primate research, we've had advances for sickle cell anemia treatment. And if you actually remember, back a few months ago, the NIH director, Francis Collins, highlighted this clinical trial on 60 Minutes. And if you look back and you trace back what those clinical trials were based upon, it was actually non-human primate research. So you have a direct example of how basic research with non-human primates has led to advances in gene therapy and then ultimately led successful sickle cell anemia trials. So much so that the NIH director believes that we now have a cure. So all of these, you need to think big picture with these examples so that you can show people from basic science to the bedside just how important research with animals are. So that's non-human primates. Let's use another example. So canines. Canines and other companion animals, that's quite controversial, and rightly so. We all love dogs and our pets, but we also have to remember just how much they have helped medical treatments and health for both people and animals, once again. So again, go back to the Venn diagram. You have at the top because of canine research, we now have advances helping canines with parasites, flea, tick repellents. You also have advances made for people that suffer from retinal degeneration and diabetes, metabolic syndrome. But more often than not, in the middle, they affect both. Spinal cord injuries is a great example. And over 250,000 Americans are diagnosed with a spinal cord injury every year, and it costs the U.S. $9.5 billion annually. So it is not, something small here. And canines are one of the greatest models to study this condition, and that probably may lead to the question, well, why canines? Why can't you study it in a mouse or a smaller animal? And that's a fair question. But that's an opportunity to talk about scale. The size of the spinal cord of a canine is much more similar to that of a human than a mouse. Therefore, if and when a study goes on to take on a clinical application, it's much more translatable. So that is why the canines are just such an invaluable model for things like spinal cord injury. And again, they make up so few of the animal research in general. Again, less than 1% of all species. So another great example is underneath, you have treatment for diabetes came from canine research. Because of early studies in the pancreas of the dog, we now have life-saving insulin treatment. And so many people depend on that today, and that we can thank for because of animal research. So those are two examples, and we have a wide range of other species available, but I wasn't going to walk you through each and every one of them because I trust you all to do that yourselves. But we have rabbits, cats, goats, llamas. I can't even remember. We have 9 total. So please, these will be ready hopefully by the end of the month. And we are very excited for folks to be using them. But this is the overall concept of the fact sheets that you can use. It's just a different animal model for each time. So to wrap up, I wanted to mention, and reiterate once again that the public support for animal research is declining, and there's something needs to be done here. And I think what we're doing right now is not enough. So as a community, I think we need to be more proactive and speak about the importance of animal research. And one way to do that is with these fact sheets. And I want to also emphasize the fact that FASEB is here to serve as a resource. So if there are items that folks in the field or on the ground are hearing that you think FASEB can step in, please let us know. I mean, in addition to the policy statements and letters to Congress that we send, we are open to hearing from scientists and trying to do the best we can so we can offer the most effective resources for you. But once again, remember that most research is conducted in mice, rats, and zebrafish, and all of the other animal models make up less than 1%, but they have just been so vital to unlocking the mysteries of biology and disease. So with that, remember to think big picture, to remember all of the direct clinical examples that have come from so many of these species, and to just remember these points when talking about animal research, and to not be afraid. There are some vital concerns out there, but there are also so many benefits to both animals and humans. And so with that, I wanted to go ahead and open up the floor for questions. I promised you all that it would be short, so I am here, though, for as much time as you need to answer any questions that you may have. Okay, I see one, and I'm trying to get to it. Let me expand this here. Okay. Can you talk about how the Animal Welfare Act doesn't apply to laboratory mice or rats? That is a terrific question. And the Animal Welfare Act does not pertain exclusively to mice or rats. However, there are so many policies, including the PHS policy, that does pertain to mice or rats. And the guide itself lists several examples of how mice and rats need to be cared for. So in every animal study, there is a direct law that is overseeing the research, the animal being used for the research. And then another question, do we go to the website for these resources or can we order them? These will be available on the website and you can download them and print them as you wish. So there's no need to go through a second kind of step to order them. And then someone asked, joined late, so I may have missed it. When will the fact sheets be available? The fact sheets we are hoping by the end of the month. They are in its final design stages, so we are just as eager as you are to get them up and available on the website. I wanted to maybe open up are there other species that you think that we could be using? I would be more than happy. Just read a question, do you also have links that are for animal research for kids? That is a great question and not something I actually had thought of. But you know, let me think on that. But that's a possibility to kind of break down the information a little bit further, so it's not as sciencey, so that kids are able to understand it. That's a great public education service. And then someone just answered your question. ALAS has fact sheets for kids. So that's a great resource. There are so many organizations out there like ALAS that has terrific resources for people to use. Someone suggested non-vertebrate animals. I think that's great. You know, first that comes to mind that is so often used is zebrafish. There is just so much research being done on zebrafish, and I think it'd be great to kind of show that the research that's being done, but also the clinical advances that have come from that as well. That's a great point. Thank you. Where on the website will we be able to find the fact sheet? So on our homepage, you have science policy. At the top, there is a tab there, and if you click science policy and go to the different issues, the first issue is animal research in education. And underneath animal research and education, there is a teaching and advocacy material, and it will be listed there. But I also do want to mention I will be writing a Washington Update, which is our biweekly newsletter. I will be writing a little synopsis of these fact sheets, and it will be posted also on our website, and you can find that in our publications. The date that it will run is December 9th. Can we post the links to our websites? I'm the executive director. Oh yes, absolutely. I would love to. Once these are up, you know, I will write a Washington Update article, and then please feel free to steer folks into that direction. We would love for it to get a lot of traffic. And then someone asked, do you have suggestions for countering the contention that alternatives can replace animals? And that is such a great point. And you know, you hear this a lot, like animal research is not necessary because, you know, alternatives are out there, like organs on a chip, or computer modeling. And, you know, as a scientist myself, but also having talked to so many scientists, those studies can only supplement the work that's being done in animals. It cannot fully replace. You need the entire physiological system in order to test the effect of a drug, or if you're studying basic biology. Because let's say you're studying a drug and you're trying to test it on an organ on a chip. But how do you know how it's going to react when it's a fully functioning animal? Is it going to just affect that organ like it's supposed to, or will it have secondary effects on other systems in the body? So those are questions that can only happen if you study the entire physiological system in an animal. So that is as of right now, and scientists, are pushing towards that day where we no longer have to use animals, and we are trying to reduce the number of animals we're using, but we are just not there yet. The science and the technology is not there yet, but those alternatives are great supplementary information. One question, do you also provide information on the pros and cons of modeling as a way to reduce the use of animals? I think I understand what you're asking. We don't have something that provides that information, but if you could provide me a little more information on what you're looking for, that would be helpful, because I'm trying to develop new resources for FASEB, and I would like to know a little bit more about what you're talking about. And then also speaking, I mentioned at the top of the webinar, we are working with NIGMS at NIH for a webinar in January on the diversity of research organisms. So the typical usage that we say is model organism or research model. And NIGMS is trying to actually push away from that, because there's not just one model out there to study a specific condition or a disease. There are so many out there. And there's a variety of organisms that we don't even know about out there in the world that people are studying and are actually useful, and people would benefit from using more. So I'm partnering with NIGMS to kind of dive into this topic a little bit, and then hear from two researchers about models that they're using in their lab. And one in particular uses a variety of models. He never uses just one. You hear oftentimes a lab uses strictly mice, but he uses a multitude to answer his questions. So I think that's important. So stay tuned for that. That will be January 21st, 2020. Another question. Very often, before animals are used in experiments, a great amount of initial cell culture, thus reducing numbers of animals used or needed. And I'm getting several links to resources that are helpful. So thank you so much. That's great. Have you thought about developing the fact sheets in Spanish? That is so great, because I think we need to work on that. That is such a great suggestion, because it's been in the back of my mind actually for a while. It'd be great to have these fact sheets available in different languages. And this is exactly the reminder that I needed. Thank you so much. I will definitely take that into consideration. And as a Greek person, we should probably make some Greek ones, because I'm sure I would give them to my family. I really would. And they can talk about animal research. And I'm just sitting here laughing by myself. These are all terrific suggestions. I really appreciate this. If there are any other thoughts, I see we've had quite a bit. Thank you so much. I can wait a couple more minutes, but if there's questions you have about advocating on animal research, someone just said, I really like the format of the fact sheets. Thank you. And well, thank you. That really, a lot of time and effort has been put into this, and it's been reviewed by our Science Policy Committee quite a bit. And I really love the people I work with at the Animal and Research Subcommittee and at the Science Policy Committee level. So thank you so much. And we hope these are helpful for you guys. And I will just probably wait another minute unless you have any other burning questions. But thank you again so much, everyone, for tuning in to this short webinar. But I hope you found it useful, and I hope you will spread the word about the availability of these two fact sheets, and continue to come to FASEB for any of your animal research needs. I sound like an infomercial. Thank you all again so much, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week.